Welcome to Right on Wednesday. This week's word is entitled, What Does It Matter? I'm in Philippians 1, and today I was able to get through verses 12 through 18. So let's get started. Verse number 12 says, Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. Now, this is the Apostle Paul speaking. He's saying what has happened to me has advanced the kingdom. It has advanced the gospel. What happened to him? Imprisonment. Paul is in jail, and he's saying that by him being in prison, it actually furthered the gospel. How so? Basically, the people started preaching more. The people got like this bold spirit about them because of Paul being in prison. Now, why did they get bold because of that? Why would him being in chains make them bold? I'm gonna say two quick things. So number one, Paul being in prison, Paul suffering persecution is prophetic. So when you go back to Acts 9, this is when Saul is converted into Christianity. This is when Saul becomes Paul. And, he encountered Jesus on the road to Damascus. The brilliance, the glory of Christ was so bright, it was so magnificent that it blinded Paul. So he was blind for 3 days. And Jesus sent a vision to another one of his servants by the name of Ananias. Ananias was told to go and restore Paul's vision. And this is what Jesus said to Ananias concerning Paul. This is Acts 9, verse 15 through 16. It says, But the Lord said to Ananias, Go. This man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their kings, and to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. So when you come back over here to Philippians and you see what the Philippians are viewing, is prophecy being fulfilled. Jesus said that the people who preach his gospel would suffer through persecution. And so Paul being in prison he was only in prison for sharing the gospel. So this is like confirmation to the Philippians that this is all true. Like prophecy is being fulfilled. He's being prosecuted. We're being prosecuted just because we are Christians. So that lit like a fire in them to continue on in spreading the gospel. It was like confirmation for them. Another example I had that came to my mind is kind of like a secular example, but y'all know how when you watch some of these movies and TV shows, like when you see a leader of a criminal organization, like say someone who's, in the mafia, Nino Brown, that type of stuff. When a leader of a criminal organization is thrown into prison, often those who are still free, those outsiders, it just burns a fire in them to continue on in their business. It's like they want to make their leader proud. They want to bring honor to their leader, although it's corrupt. That's what they do. That's what you see in these movies and sitcoms. And that's kind of like, of course, in a holy way, which you see happening here with the Philippians. So they want to spread the gospel, but they also want to, keep this thing running for Paul too, because if it had not been for Paul, many of these people would not be believers, okay? So you have these believers spreading furthermore the gospel because of Paul's chains. Now, a quick modern day application, I want to kind of make this applicable to us. Paul's chains freed the Philippians in a way. It freed them into more boldness. So here's a modern day application. Sometimes your chains, sometimes your captivity, sometimes your suffering is in place for somebody else to be free. This is what Paul said in another letter that he wrote to the Corinthians. This is 2 Corinthians verses 3 through 4. It says, Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. He's saying here that that comfort that the God of comfort gave you when you were going through your trials, you can turn around and comfort somebody else when they go through their own. When you read Revelations 12 and 11, it tells you that we are overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So sometimes your chains are in place to help free somebody else. But you can't do that if you don't testify, if you don't give your testimony, if you don't tell your story of how God brought you through. We need more people doing that. So know that your chains, whether it's something you're going through now or something that you went through in times past, you need to share that. Because in you sharing your captivity and how you got free from it, or how you might not be free from it, but you're still leaning on the Lord to bring you through, that could help somebody, that could free somebody. So take that as a modern day application of Paul's chains freeing the Philippians. Your chains can free somebody else. All right, so let's go on. Now, it's interesting because although his chains advanced the kingdom, right? You got more people out here spreading the gospel. Many of the people are a certain number of people. They were spreading it, but they weren't doing it with the right heart. So when you read Philippians 1 verse 17, it says this: the former preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I am in chains. So this is a truth that we got to accept, and we don't like to do it, but it happens. Everyone who preaches truth is not living in truth. There's a lot of people who are, quite honestly, they're hypocrites. There's a lot of people who preach the gospel and their hearts aren't changed. Meaning they're giving truth, but they're not living in truth. Now this is a thing, right? Because a lot of times what happens is people will not follow God. They will turn away from God because someone else is being hypocritical. They will abandon Christian circles because they find out some people in the circle are hypocrites. They're not living the life. But here's the thing. This has always been a thing. Even in the beginning. This is the beginning of Christianity. You see people preaching truth with selfish ambition. When you look at James 3:14 and 15, James also talks about this, how people are preaching the gospel out of selfish ambition, meaning they are not given the gospel from a heart of love for God or his people. It's for other evil, demonic reasons. And that's what James says in James 3:14, 15. He says their ambitions, their heart was evil. It says it was even demonic, right? So many people, unfortunately, they fall away from God when they discover that someone in the church or some people in the church aren't legitimate. And don't get me wrong, it's disappointing and it can be hurtful when you find out that someone who you thought was a legit man or woman of God is a fraud. But this has always existed. It exists now, and it will continue to exist when we are long gone. But although they were corrupt Christians communicating the gospel, this is what Paul said. In verse 18, this is Philippians 1 verse 18, this is what Paul says about those corrupt people who give truth but don't live truth. He said, but what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice. Paul said, it don't matter. It don't matter that they're not even living in truth. Now, that's not to say that they won't be judged for their evil deeds. It's not to say that God don't see them and that they won't have to give an account. But what he's saying is that Christ is preached. Either way, Christ is preached. So glory be to God. Now, That's like if you have a robber, someone who's a thief, and they're looking at this murderer and they say, you shouldn't be out here murdering folks. Now he a robber, but is he wrong? No, he's telling the truth. That murderer should not be out here murdering. And if that murderer hears that word from that robber, it's still the truth. And if that murderer does not change it, let's say that word from that robber is the only word from God that murderer hears before they lose their life. When that murderer dies and goes and meet the judge, they can't say, I didn't take the word from the robber because he's a robber. Well, it doesn't matter. The truth was given. You are not going to be judged by the vessel from which the truth comes. You are going to be judged based on whether you accepted the truth or not. And that's hard to hear sometimes, but, and don't get me wrong, it would be a little bit more or a lot more effective if the vessel from which the message is coming is truthful too. Like, it would be nice if truth was given from people who actually lived the truth. That would be awesome. But the fact of the matter is, when you go and be judged, God is not going to ask you about anybody else. He is going to look at the fact, what was the truth given to you, and did you make a change? And if you didn't, you are not going to be judged based off of that vessel. You are going to be judged off the fact that you didn't accept the truth. And so that's why Paul said, what does it matter? What does somebody else's evil ways have to do with you living well, living good, living according to God's standard? What does their unclean hearts have to do with God cleaning your heart? It doesn't matter. And so this is something we have to understand and know. Like, it's a lot of people who fall away from God because of somebody else's hypocritical ways. Don't let their hypocritical ways keep you from God. Take the truth, regardless of whoever it comes from. The truth is the truth, regardless of who the messenger is. And so, take the truth. Now, you may have to, be careful with accepting the sin, right? I'm not saying to accept the sin that person is doing. You can rebuke the sin, but accept the truth that they were giving. And you may be, you may need to be led by God on, whether you need to leave that leadership or, whether you need to leave this circle of Christians. But don't rebuke the truth because the vessel is unclean. The truth is the truth, regardless of who it comes from. And so that's why this article is entitled, What Does It Matter? Because at the end of the day, all that's going to matter is that, was the truth given? Was the truth given? And did you accept the truth? God ain't going to ask you about who gave it. He's going to ask about whether you accepted it. And so that's why this week's Right on Wednesday Word is entitled, What Does It Matter? I went through verses 12 through 18. And that's all I got for y'all. Just remember, just to wrap up, remember to let your chains free somebody else. Let your captivity and your suffering free somebody else by giving your testimony. The way God comforted you, may you turn around and comfort somebody else when they are going through their own thing. And although sometimes, many times, the people who give the gospel are corrupt people, they don't live according to the truth that they speak. Don't let their hypocritical ways keep you out of heaven. All right, that's all I got. That's verses 12 through 18. Next week I'll be back. I don't know how far down I'm gonna go, but that's all I got for y'all today. Okay, what does it matter? Is this week's Right on Wednesday Word. I'm in Philippians 1. Y'all be blessed. Okay, have a beautiful day in Jesus' name.